Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of LISN Overtime. Yes, that's right. We came up with a name shortly after we recorded the episode, so kind of like not a cold take on my part in the first episode of the recording, but I guess a good call that we were going to come up with one soon.
Mm,
And I think it fits. I want to thank everybody for your support and all the love that we were shown on the first episode. It really means so much to me, so much to Vin.
of course.
We're really raring to go with episode 2. We got a lot of good stuff for you guys. And we're going to start with something that we're excited about now. We've hit a quarter mark in the season. So, Vin, hit it. Ladies and gentlemen, the Suffolk County High School Hockey League varsity standings through the first quarter of the season. There you have it. KPC reigning supreme through about 6 games that everybody's played. Some teams have 5. We wanted to wait until the 5-game mark so that it was a quarter way through the season. So it'll all shake out in the end the way that it's supposed to. But right now, some really interesting team placements as far as where some of the positionings are. I think Connetquot Sayville's got to be my most shocking here at 5.
Oh yeah, they definitely. Let me tell you something. All those kids after last night's game against Smithtown were really charged up, and rightfully so. They had a really strong performance in net by Matt Hughes, and really just kept them in that game for as long as possible. Even when they were down a goal or two, they never lost faith in their team. They had the confidence brewing the entire night, and they were just like they bought into what they wanted to do, and they really shocked a lot of us up there last night. I'll tell you the truth, and it's really shown so far. They've played a lot of close games so far, and it's all starting to come together. And the crazy part about last night too, no Logan Keel, no Luke Savage, no Matthew Campanola. Those are big names for them. Those are some of their better players to start the year. They were all playing on a line together, and I even argued that was going to be one of the top lines in Suffolk to watch for. And the fact that they played so well against the Smithtown team, who's been cream of the crop all year. Can you imagine what that team's going to be like when those 3 kids come back and everyone starts clicking? That could be a real team to jump up in the standings. And first, I want to apologize to all the Connetquot fans out there for last week and not giving you guys enough credit. I know there were a lot of doubts and in my power rankings and everything like that. It's almost like that Shaq meme where it's I'm sorry I wasn't really too familiar with your game. So apologies for that. You definitely have at least my attention. I for sure believe you have Dylan's attention now, being
Absolutely.
being a top 5 team in the varsity division through 6 games, and I definitely think you guys are one to watch going forward.
Oh, absolutely. And I think something funny, I honestly didn't even realize this until I just read it right now.
Hmm.
We come up with podcast topics that we want to talk about. We make notes and
Hmm.
just, we want to be able to have good content for you guys. Um, the second bullet point I have on the sheet
Hmm.
is can Connetquot Sayville make a run at the 5 seed?
I think it's
Where,
theirs.
well, where are they right now?
They're
They're
five.
the 5 seed.
They're five, and right now I think it's theirs to lose. In all honesty,
I think so too, especially after the way that Northport played. St. Anthony's being so up and down.
Hmm.
Although they looked phenomenal with a full roster. But I definitely want to talk about Connetquot Sayville first. Give
I
them
do.
their due.
Yeah.
They earned it. They came out and I don't want to say survived Smithtown.
Yeah.
They beat them.
Yeah.
But you look at the time of possession and the chances had. Smithtown had a lot of
They
chances and a
did.
lot of offensive zone time in that game yesterday.
They did.
At Connetquot Sayville came back from 2 different deficits, much like we saw on Monday night with West Islip coming back a couple times against Sachem. They weren't able to pull that game out,
Right.
but Connetquot Sayville, that's a gutsy, gritty win for
Absolutely.
a team that started off just a little slow, but now they've started to find their stride a little
Hmm.
bit. Played a close game with Kings Park Commack.
Yep.
You beat down West Islip.
Hmm.
You obviously got the win that you needed to against Middle Country. But this is just a star win that, like a year ago when they beat them, that was what propelled them into the
Yeah.
playoffs. Now, it's still very early, but to be in the 5 seed right now after people were kind of writing them off at the beginning of the season, teams are going to be shooting for them now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big win for them, and like we said earlier, Matt Hughes, big game for him. Unfortunately, we weren't tracking stats in the game live like we typically have been in the past couple of days, so I wasn't able to get a feel as to how many shots on goal he had. But it wouldn't surprise me if he had north of 40 saves. He played phenomenal. I'm telling you, the first 2 periods, maybe 20 minutes or so, it sure looked like, we were waiting, or at least I was waiting for Smithtown to break through. It was 1-0 Smithtown, then it was 2-1. I'm saying to myself, okay, well, when are the floodgates going to open, quote unquote? But like I said, those kids, especially Hughes, just battled in the net there, and they didn't let up. And you know what it was too? Connetquot had a lot of chances earlier in the second period as well, a lot of breakdowns for Smithtown defensively that they didn't capitalize on. So 2-1 Smithtown going into the third, we're thinking, okay, how long can Connetquot hang around? And they come out and, four different goal scorers for them. Tom Forty, Gray, Fleischauer, Marchese. Like we said earlier, some of the better players, they're more skilled players, weren't there last night. And you have all guys down the lineup who are chipping in, contributing. And they wouldn't die, quote unquote. They wouldn't die off. Siegel scored late, so again, I said, okay, maybe that's the dagger in him. Nope, Fleischauer came down. He had a big game last night too. A lot of minutes for him, and their whole team as a whole. Like we said, no Keel, no Savage, no one of the name that I forgot. Campanola. Thank you. A little bit of a new look for their offense too. Jack Mercado played a little forward last night. Ethan Burde played up a little bit. So a lot of different moving pieces there, and quite honestly, they didn't look too bad. The only thing that would be concerning, like you touched on, was the fact that possession, Smithtown had them beat, and the shots department, but there were a lot of breakdowns that Smithtown had in their own zone, which we quite honestly haven't been used to seeing. And Connetquot just didn't finish on them. It could have been 4-1 Smithtown at the end of the first period.
Absolutely.
And just like I said, give credit to Matt Hughes. And, that's we talked about this last episode in the sense of who can steal you a game, what can steal you a game. Whether that game was 4-3 or 2-1, Matt Hughes stole on that game. That's 2 points all to Matt Hughes.
And they did get a lot of good breaks.
Yeah.
Hughes bailed them out of so many turnovers and so many chances for Smithtown. He made timely saves. And it's funny, like we talked about after the St. Anthony's game, how Berhart didn't make some of the saves that maybe he should have, and that's a 7-1 game. So that game maybe makes a save here and there, what it ends up 5-1.
Right.
But I mean, that's the difference right there. And you see the difference in Smithtown with Jake Citron. He obviously did not play last night. It was Luke Pavone getting another varsity start, and he played well.
He did.
He got that first goal was definitely not his fault. That's
No.
a tough break with Smithtown's defense kind of puck watching a little bit. You lose a guy backdoor and crashing the net. Good hard play there by Connetquot.
Right.
But they're fast and they're gritty, man. They don't give up very easily.
No.
And I'm looking at it right now. I don't really know. I'll have to look and see who else has this, but they have 5 or 6 different. They have 5 different goal scorers who have at least 4 goals. Tom Forty has 4, Savage has 4, Campanola has 5, Marchese has 4, and Fleischauer has 4. And now they don't have a lot of other goal scorers. They have a lot of guys with 1 or 0. They have a couple with 2, but I mean, to get goals primarily from those guys, when we talked about how much of a team-oriented league this has become, you're in a good spot as far as down the stretch looking to be, contenders.
Yeah, I'm just going through quick myself. I'm only seeing 3 guys with about 4 goals or more. So, like I said, I think it's all coming together now for Connetquot. I think a lot of their players, they trust not only each other, but I think the coaches trust them. And the same can be said for their goaltender. Listen, we're talking a lot about Matt Hughes today, and rightfully so. But I think everyone has confidence in not just all the players on that team, but which goalie they roll out on a nightly basis. And they're one of only 2 teams in this varsity division that has a triple-headed monster in goal, with Keel, Tolikowski, and Hughes, whereas Northport has Spinelli, Haley Martin, and Evan Schubert. So that's something for them to kind of work around, see how that shapes out, if you will, shakes out as far as which of those 3 are going to get the quote-unquote majority of the starts. But Matt Hughes definitely looked like their number 1 goaltender last night, and it definitely wouldn't surprise me going forward if he gets a couple more starts here and there. But again, like I said, I think there's a lot of confidence, not just in all of their forwards and defensemen, but I think their goaltending, they have a good group there behind them as well.
Absolutely, and at any level, the varsity level and NHL level, wherever you want to put it, if you don't have the goaltending, then you're never going to be able to outscore bad goaltending. And goaltending can win you games like it did last night. Hughes gave them enough chances to stay in that game, and you get the big goal from Matteo Marchese. Right in that last minute, who is obviously the leader of that team. he's the guy that they're going to look to down the stretch, and to be that calming presence on the defensive end as well. So the fact that they have as many goal scorers as they do,
Mm,
um, that can light it up any given night
yeah,
and just find the back of the net, it definitely helps him a lot, free him up,
yeah.
but it also allows for him to, I think, step into it a little more. Like he can feel confident that if he doesn't have it one night, he can do something else. But he
Mm,
also can, if he wants to go out there and have a
yeah,
phenomenal offensive night, he can do that too.
absolutely. Big players shine in big moments, and 3-3 last night after Fleischhauer tied that game. I was thinking to myself, I said, this is the kind of game where one of those top players or those big players really make a play and it stands out. And none other than Matteo Marchese, second game-winning goal for Connetquot this year, the big overtime winner against Middle Country. He scores the late goal last night, and that's the kind of player who they look to down the stretch, and they say, how many minutes can you play? He's going to be a big part of their team. You talked about other players that can free him up. Danny Jung is one player to me that stands out. He played a lot of minutes with him last night, paired up. And then it's just their other defensemen too who can help him out. Jack Mercado's another one, George Vadyak. There's a lot of guys that a lot of it's going to be on Marchese from both an offensive and a defensive perspective, but it's exactly what you said, is who can give him a little bit of a breather, a little bit of a rest to essentially preserve him down the stretch and make sure that he's thriving in positions that they want to put him in.
Yeah, Jung was definitely noticeable last night from
Hmm.
a physical forward standpoint. Really was liking the way that he played
Yeah.
as far as a forward position goes, complementing some of the other players they had. And you mentioned that they didn't have a lot of their other bigger players, so it's nice to see that they have kids that step up in
Yeah.
those moments and
Hmm.
can get the team going. Um, but I mean, they put themselves in a really good spot. So now your next three games are St. Anthony's, Ward Melville, Northport, Huntington. Those are the
Hmm.
teams that are right there.
Yeah.
So this is a time of, it's separation time
Yeah.
for Connetquot Sayville. It's do or not do or die in a sense,
Hmm.
but it could be make or break where
Yeah.
you win all three of these games, you get 6 points, you
Oh
don't
yeah.
let any of these other teams get points, and you're automatically locked up into a middle top playoff seed, depending
Hmm.
on what happens if the four teams at the top, Kings Park, Sachem, East Islip, and Smithtown, are going to beat up on each other
Right.
and just take each other to the woodshed. Um,
Yeah.
then you could be entering the conversation if you slip through a win, like if you get a little bit of a comeback win against Kings Park instead of losing 4-3,
Right.
or you're able to take Smithtown down again, or if you can rebound against East Islip where they got it handed to them a little bit,
Yeah.
um, in their season opener. But
Hmm.
I mean, it's a very interesting team that I don't think many people saw, um, and we've touched on it so many times, but it's true. People had them in the lower rankings of this 10-team division,
Yeah.
and now it's time to start reassessing and
Hmm.
seeing, maybe we were wrong.
Hmm.
It's time to start reassessing them as a middle of the road, can be moving up into that top tier team if they're playing their best game.
Yeah, yeah, and you took the words out of my mouth as far as separation these next coming games. They get a little bit of a break now. They get about a week and a half break or so before they really get into a really crucial stretch run for them. And it's funny to say the word crucial in the middle of October when we're not even halfway through the season. But like you said, St. Anthony's is right there. You don't think if you don't think those kids are going to get up for that St. Anthony's game, then I don't know what to tell you. That's a county finals rematch right there, and that means a lot more than you think it will. And then you go Ward, Melville, and Northport all in the span of about 6 days or so, about a week or so. So a big crucial stretch for them. Very curious to see how it goes, but I think they're definitely riding high now off the momentum from last night's game, and especially that St. Anthony's game. That game's the difference between being a 4 or 5 playing in that 4 or 5 game or having to play in that 3-6-2-7, if you will. So I think it's a great
Yeah.
opportunity for them to create that separation and just make a substantial gap between them and that next team.
That home positioning, some people may not realize home positioning is really important in
Of course.
hockey, even if it's at the varsity level. You want to be able to have the matchups you want. You want to get that last change.
Hmm.
So, if you're able to, swap positions with a Smithtown,
Yeah.
whereas, right now, if the season ended today, it would be Smithtown KPC,
Yeah.
Smithtown the 4, KPC, Connetquot Sayville, Smithtown Connetquot Sayville in the 4 and
Yeah.
the 5. Connetquot Sayville would have to send their guys out first. If
Yep.
you don't send, like, your Marchese out, then they're gonna send out their Trites, their Noche, their Petito, their
Hmm.
Sabatino, although they're going to send out their hard hitters, and
Yeah,
they're going to try to take advantage of Marchese being on the bench.
of
And if you
course.
can't scramble to get that change right off the face-off, then you could be looking at, you're down a goal, you're down 2 goals, and the hill starts to climb.
Yeah.
But we'll see if they can overcome it. Like you said, it's a crucial stretch, and then we start to flip the schedule over, where you get back to in the middle of November. It's East Islip, it's Sachem,
Yeah.
and those are two of the top tier teams in the league. And
Yeah.
if you're getting hot at the right time and you can take it to those teams, then you're starting to really be in the conversation of where you're going to be in the home ice section of the 1 through 4.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Um, you know, point of the matter is, don't sleep on the birds. They really they really sent the message last night, and I don't think it was just to us, the two of us here, or just anyone else in our company, if you will. But I think they really sent that message to the league. Smithtown was one of two teams last night going in that have had not been beaten, and I think it just the way they came back really stood out. They never led until 58 seconds left when Marchese scored the game winner, and I think that was like, look, we touched on it last episode too about how Smithtown is one of those teams where they play a full 45 minutes, and there were breakdowns last night, like we said, that wasn't a question. I think now it's just, you know, Connetquot finally exposed a little bit of some flaws in their game, especially on the defensive end, and I think if that doesn't get cleaned up soon, other teams will start to realize that, take advantage of it, and I'm not saying it's trouble time for Smithtown or a time to panic because
No,
again they're
absolutely not.
still in the top four and it's still somewhat early to an extent, but there were some flaws there definitely.
Yeah, and I don't want to take anything away from Luke Pavone because
No.
he's a great goaltender in his own right. But I
Yeah.
definitely want to see if they play again, if Citron is in net, what
Yeah.
happens there. Because especially in their latest game when they played, hold on one second.
East Islip.
So it was East Islip. Yeah,
Yep.
he bailed them out of so many chances, and
Hmm.
we've talked about it way too many times for it to be anything less than a redundancy. Um, how lethal East Islip is in transition. He just
Sure.
bailed them out so many times.
Hmm.
Um, and maybe he wouldn't have made any of the saves, and maybe the game would have ended up the same way. But from watching the goals, it looked like Connetquot Sayville had a plan to go on a certain side of Pavone and try to get
Yeah.
chances, and they were able to successfully beat him enough times to win that game.
Right, definitely. And like we said, it could have been 4-1 Smithtown after the first period. It could have been 4-4 after the second period based on just how the chances go. There was a wide open chance in the second period, cross ice pass across. They just missed the net. I don't know. I believe that might have been Lenahan or Jung, whoever it was. If they finish on those chances, I'm telling you now that game does not end 4-3 Connecticut.
Yeah, I agree with you. But we'll switch gears a little bit here. Talking about Connetquot Sayville's next game.
Hmm.
They're going to be playing St. Anthony's.
Yeah.
St. Anthony's picking up a big win
Oh yeah.
on Monday night in a New York State Finals rematch. They took
Yeah.
on Northport
Hmm.
Huntington, and TJ Holmschneider,
Yeah.
back-to-back shutouts,
Hmm.
man.
Yep.
Nobody else has one.
Nope. Nope.
So I know people might chirp us here with the bat. The first one, 8 saves against Ward Melville, but it's a shutout nonetheless.
That's
Nobody
right.
else has recorded 0 goals in a game. TJ Olmschneider has 2 now. Is it time to maybe look at you got to start him in these games and see what he can give you?
I think you definitely have to at least consider it and ride the hot hand. He's both their wins this year, shutout wins where he's been in net. You look at their next game, which I believe is against Kings Park. No, I'm sorry, that's wrong. Yeah, no, they go against Middle Country on not this Sunday, but the following Sunday. So I think you definitely have to consider it, but again, they're another one of those teams this week that have a full week off. They'll go back to practice and they'll work on some things. They'll fine tune some things, but I think they're definitely feeling a lot more up and confident in themselves, and I definitely think Olmschneider is too. And I definitely think you have to consider it, especially after the way he played. He made some good saves against Northport. That wasn't no 8 save shutout like the Ward Melville game was. That was a full on. Gaffinoff had a couple of chances. Collins had a beautiful play through the middle between two of their defensemen, and he made a really good sliding pad save. He's again. We talked about before how Matt Hughes looked like a number one goaltender last night. Olmsnyder looks like their number one goaltender right now, at least in my mind.
Yeah, we talked about it after the East Islip game. Burhart just missed some pucks that kind of left you scratching your head a little bit.
Mm,
Um, I think you can't, it's the same thing with maybe like a Spinelli or something's just a little. Maybe they just haven't found their groove yet. And
yeah,
I think once they do, those are guys that'll win you playoff games
absolutely.
single-handedly,
Yeah.
single-handedly, easily.
Hmm.
when it comes down to it, if you're asking me who I'm picking to goaltend for me, those guys, Spinelli and Burkhart, they're in consideration for me. If I need a one
Yeah.
game win,
Mhm.
big game,
Mhm.
I know I can get 2 goals out of my team. I'll consider one of them
Right.
in a group of goaltenders in this varsity division to be my goaltender for that game.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm far from concerned for Burhart. I know he I know the kind of competitor he is, and we saw it in the county final. He dropped the first game by a goal, and he came back and slammed the door when he needed to. So I definitely think the opportunity to quote unquote rebound is absolutely there. But again, I think if you're St. Anthony's and if you're the coaching staff there, I think you definitely have to consider the fact that why not ride the hot hand again? The week that they have now in preparation for next Sunday against Middle Country is definitely to their advantage, and I think it's to most advantage to Burhart. So I think you consider it, but again, they're another one that has a very significant stretch coming up because again, it's Middle Country. Then they go back to back again a Sunday Monday with Connetquot. So if last week's games were telling, you definitely think that they're gonna split again, where Burhart will get one and Olmschneider will get the other. But we could be totally wrong. We'll see how that pans out. But again, Olmschneider has done his job.
Absolutely. Oh, he's done more than his job.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, Absolutely more than his job.
Mhm.
And barring when this comes out, it'll either be the Friday or Saturday. Um, he's looking at. He's going to be one of the stars of the week. Is T.J.
Oh
Olmschneider.
yeah.
So spoiler alert for everybody out there. Um, you'll now find out who the other two are coming on Sunday
Right.
or Monday rather. But yeah, no, back to back shutouts. It's
Mhm.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
After we didn't have one,
Mhm.
he puts up back to back like it's just light work.
Yeah, we'll have to put the old takes exposed on the two of us betting on Citron to get the first shutout. So that'll be that'll be something to
Hey,
see.
I'll always have Jesse Lemza.
Right,
I'll
that's right.
always have
That
Jesse
you will.
Lemza. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch the which game was
The
that? It was
pregame of the
KPC.
Kings Park Commack and Northwood Huntington game.
Go back and watch that pregame, and you'll understand. Um, yeah, but St. Anthony's now handing Northport their second straight loss. St.
Yeah.
Anthony's now moving into their second straight win.
Yeah.
They're now tied, I do believe, in points with Northport.
Northwood's got the
They're
extra
one
overtime.
behind
Yeah.
because Northport has the tie. But you're starting to close the gap here. You're
Of
trying to
course.
get a little separation from West Islip. There's a big game coming up with that.
Mhm.
You're still just 2 points behind Connetquot Sayville, and
Mhm.
that's a big game that's coming up. So these 5 through 8 teams are all going to be playing each other now, and they're going to be playing like the 1 through 4s are,
Yeah.
where everyone's going to be jockeying for position.
Right.
And there could be a collateral where, if some teams beat up on one team and other teams beat up on another team. There's going to be a lot of movement through
Yeah.
the middle of this division.
Mhm.
And even at the bottom, maybe, if Middle Country and Ward Melville can catch some of these teams after trying to hash it out with, like, if Smithtown and East Islip are going at it, again, physical, 1-1 going into overtime.
Sure.
And then the next day you have to play, like, Middle Country or Ward Melville. It almost acts as like a trap game where a Middle Country that comes out and plays hard, physical, fast, wanting to try and just beat you on everything. And they just need to learn how to pace, and if they do, they're going to be a good team. But they can get a win on a trap game like that, where if you aren't prepared, or you're maybe still hung up on last night, or you've drained your emotions, they're going to steal one. And if these teams don't, really get the points that they need in the games that they should be getting them, then, they're going to maybe sneak in at the end, and it's going to come by surprise.
Yeah. I want to touch on that hung up on last night point that you made because we were wondering after the St. Anthony's East Islip game, especially the big thing with us was how are they going to respond tomorrow? The road doesn't get easier for them. So, 7-1 against the East Islip, that's a rough go to put it nicely. That's a rough go for them, and we wondered. We said how are they going to respond? Northport's no slouch. They're going to come out firing, or at least we thought Northport was going to come out firing after losing their first regular season game in a long, long time against Smithtown. And, St. Anthony's just set the tone against them. And, with them, meaning the Friars here, I think you have to look at it with them as one game at a time. We talked about it last episode how their next 5 is huge, and it wasn't really much room for them to go less than 4-1. They have the one loss against East Islip now, and that's a really big bit, not only a big win against Northport, but a convincing win as well. Because we talked about it. It's like, what is it going to take for them to say, okay, we're back. Like, we want to get back to St. Anthony's Friars hockey. And we mentioned it after the Sunday game. Their offense didn't look so great. There was still a little bit of frustration. Granted, they were missing half their team practically. DeLugos, you go down the line, whoever else was missing for them. They come back with a full team, and we said it, or at least I told you. Look at the difference that their team is with a full squad of kids, and just when they know that the lights are bright and they need a win, they go. And to me, it starts with Nicholas DeAndrea. He had a stellar game on Monday, wasn't there for them on Sunday, and he really kind of set the tone for them and said, okay, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to not make us lose, quite honestly.
Yeah, I did talk to him before the Ward Melville game, and you could just sense kind of not the pressing, but he just wasn't content with the way that he was playing.
Yeah.
In a way,
Hmm.
not in a bad way, but you could just kind of feel that he wasn't, totally satisfied. He knew he
Sure.
should be doing more. He knew he
Hmm.
wanted to do more. And then he sees a goal go in. He had a couple shots saved by Ventrick in that game where
Mm.
he just kept looking up to the heavens like,
Yeah.
when's it gonna come?
Hmm.
And then he finally gets a break where a puck pops, he gloves it down and slides it in on the far side,
Hmm.
and then he lobs one in from outside the red line that takes a hop and goes in,
Right.
and then he nets the final one to secure the hat trick, and you could just see the relief on him,
Oh yeah.
just absolutely wash over him.
Oh yeah.
And then he obviously missed the next game, but then he came out against Northport and he put up 2 more goals, and he had a
Hmm.
couple break goals. Where he was able to make moves through people that looked phenomenal
Yeah.
and absolutely just finish on Spinelli. Um, so yeah, he's starting to get back to where he
Yeah.
needs to be, and he's back to what he knows as the game that he should be playing. So if he starts waking up and the rest of the St. Anthony's team follows, because they're
Watch out.
getting contributions from other
Yeah.
players. Monteleone's still scoring, Cotta's still scoring. DeLugos is that big-bodied presence.
Hmm.
He's more the physical, I'm going to help set up my teammates type of
Yeah.
captain. I'm still waiting for Gerard Nealon to get going. Obviously, that prediction didn't come to fruition,
Right.
but you can't have them all. He's going to start going now.
Absolutely.
This whole St. Anthony's team is going to get going, and that is a massive win over Northport on Monday. And now you try to start building some momentum. You get Middle Country, Connetquot Sayville, and West Islip, 3 teams that have come out, play gritty, play fast, and play hard. But if you can get through those 3 games and you can be 2-1 at least,
Yeah.
you can roll into your next KPC Smithtown Sachem stretch, and you can start to kind of feel a little better and say, hey, the time to go is now.
Absolutely, yeah, and a lot of the game, especially on Monday, was about DeAndre, but it's all about those other players around him too. Like you said, Monteleone, Cotta. Nealon's gonna get going, and we said it last episode too. It starts with one for them. They needed this win, in my opinion, a lot more than Northport did. Granted, Northport, quite honestly, isn't used to losing in the regular season, but just the way St. Anthony started, you needed that big convincing win against a really talented team like Northport is. And they came out and 2 goals in the first 5 minutes of the first period against Northport, and that was kind of like, oh boy, like here they come again. And Deandra had a hand in a lot of the goals, but Monteleone was visibly frustrated after Sunday's game, just after the way, maybe not just the way he played, but the way the team around them played. Again, they're missing a lot of their players, so that makes a difference.
The travel
And
schedule does take a toll on
it
some of
does.
these teams. It took a toll on Ward Melville a couple
Yep.
weeks ago,
Hmm.
and it took a toll on St. Anthony's too,
Yeah.
where there's nothing you can do about
No.
having 2 lines.
No, and every team wants to have all their players around, because that's when the competition's at its best. Quite honestly, when everyone has their best players, their most talented, strongest players, whatever you want to call it, that's when the competition in this league is at its best. And when games like are scheduled on a Monday, quote unquote, or a Wednesday, those are the games that are a little more, you can tell. There's a lot more players are there, and it's just St. Anthony, again, the point of the matter is, in my opinion, St. Anthony's obviously at their best when all their players are there, and it showed on Monday. They really responded well after a rough go on Sunday against a very strong East Islip team, and they needed that win, and the sky only goes up here for them.
Absolutely, that's definitely one that can jumpstart your season up again.
Yeah.
And the time to have the rough stretches now, early, let it happen
Hmm.
if it happens at all.
Yeah.
and then you just got to try to rebound, but you just can't let it get too out of control. And I think if they can handle this win, um, and move forward with it and
Hmm.
make it, they're like their star on the calendar, like that was what turned the season around, then
Yeah.
like we've talked about it last time too. It's all forgotten if,
Hmm.
if you get out of the hole.
Absolutely.
And they're not that far off. You
No.
win. Honestly, they could get back to 500 on next Monday.
Exactly.
You could be back to 500 next Monday after you just won three in a row, and you're back. You're back at it.
Hmm.
You have 8 points, and you're right back in the
Yeah.
conversation. But which is it's actually funny because you have 8 points and you're not anywhere close to where KPC is in first place still with
Yeah.
11 points.
Hmm.
And I guess that's going to be our transition into talking about
Hmm.
the top of the heap
Yeah.
in the varsity division.
Top dog. Yeah. Hmm.
They are top dog. The only remaining undefeated team after they handled business against Middle Country
Oh
on
yeah.
Wednesday last night.
Hmm.
Um, a very handed win.
Yeah.
I really haven't seen too many games where they looked overmatched at all or
No.
like anybody could really keep up with them.
No.
Um, they just have those scores as a team effort that are just head and shoulders above anybody else.
Yeah.
Um, you try to stop one and then you let the other one go, and
Yeah.
if you try to stop two, then there's still a third and a fourth and a
Hmm.
fifth.
Yep.
So what's it going to take to beat a team like that?
Oh, it's going to take a real strong defensive effort, and your goalie's got to be on his game for sure. Last night, I don't want to use this term as being harsh, but you combine Brazil, Prang, Parator, Berhalter, who's only played like 3 games, and he still looked phenomenal this year, and you combine them and Abazis, they look the Russian five out there against some of these teams. They look so they look so dominant
We're
offensively.
talking about the 1980s
Yes, for
Russian Olympic
context.
team. I just want to make that clear for
Right.
everybody out
Hmm.
there.
Yeah. So that's just how, in my opinion, that's just how dominant that team looks. Now, again, most of their wins are pretty convincing by a high score, other than Prang's late winner against Connetquot Sayville, but they've had very strong outings as far as not. It's not even just them too. Like yes, those are the core five for them for that team, but it's the JV kids who have really come up and just made their presence known. Lemza, Granelli. There's another individual too. I believe it's Jack Johnson. But regardless, they have it's not it while the five of those kids like I said before have been the driving force for them offensively. There are other players who are just stepping in and saying like, don't forget about us either. Those kids are no slouches. They're not weak links to that team. And we talked about it too. Joey O'Neill's looked solid in net for them too. He's one of the more aggressive goals. We mentioned this Sunday with the East Islip St. Anthony's game. He's one of the more aggressive goaltenders in the county league. And quite honestly, you kind of need that in this league. There's a lot of talent offensively this year. It's a lot more than last year, and you need someone back there for you who you can rely on and understands the game well enough, like he does, to be a calming presence and make that key save when he needs to. And he's done that. And again, Connor McGrain has done that as well. But we all know O'Neill's going to be their main man down the stretch. McGrain has done his job as well, like we said with Olmschneider. Both of those guys have done their job. But they're getting contributions from everyone as much as it's been that main five for the Knights. It's up and down everyone, and we're not even talking about Jacob Quinn, Dylan Quinn. Those are junior rounders, elites kids. Like those are real talented kids, and they're definitely a force to be reckoned with. That's my point.
Oh, force to be reckoned with is maybe an
Yeah.
understatement.
Hmm.
They're the
Hmm.
pinnacle of
Hmm.
the varsity division. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at it like they're gonna have a tough stretch coming up. So they play West Islip on Monday,
Right.
and then they play Sachem, Smithtown,
Mm.
St. Anthony's in the stretch of a week.
Yeah.
So the Sachem game is going to be ridiculously tough. Sachem is on a 5-game winning streak, and we're going to get to them in a second.
Hmm.
Smithtown is obviously Smithtown. They're
Yeah.
back to that premier Smithtown team that we've been used to over the last couple of years of
Yeah.
running the table, dominating seasons, making noise at states,
Hmm.
going to nationals, all the whole 9 yards. And then you play that St. Anthony's game, and the St. Anthony's game comes 2 days after the Smithtown game.
Yeah.
And we talked about a trap game, and this isn't a trap game in a sense that St. Anthony's is one of the weaker teams.
Right.
It's more so a trap game in the sense where St. Anthony's plays a style of puck possession that it's almost that their offense is their defense.
Yeah.
So they have the puck in the offensive zone. Not only are they giving themselves chances to score, they're not allowing the other team to come back down the ice and have time in their zone.
Right.
So that could pose a problem for Kings Park Commack. If you come out after the Smithtown game, you're going to have to play hard in that game.
Oh,
You
yeah.
cannot take Smithtown lightly.
No.
You take them lightly, they're going to run you out of the building. I don't care who you are.
Absolutely.
And if you get gassed in that game and you're not able to recover in time for Wednesday, you're going to have a very hard time trying to pry that puck away if St. Anthony's is full staffed and they're rolling. That could be trouble for Kings Park Commack.
And you know what it is too is that those St. Anthony's kids, when that game comes around, in the back of the head, they're gonna say, "Oh, we lost to these guys 7-2." They're gonna be up for that game. They're gonna be ready
absolutely. Now St. Anthony's smells blood in the water, man.
Yeah.
They smell it. They know that they're right there. They took that massive win against Northport, and they're coming for everybody now.
go. Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's such a common strategy and something people talk about in football is like the best way to beat a Tom Brady and an Aaron Rodgers is to keep them off the field,
Yeah.
possess the ball, and run the clock. That's the way St. Anthony's plays of possessing the puck and not letting Brazil praying Abazis, etc., down the ice in front of their goaltender and taking shots. Because in front, like Mikey Brazil is a big presence, and he stands in front of the net, creates traffic, and that's where the goals are scored.
Yeah.
He's doing more than just scoring goals. He's helping to create goals.
Yeah.
So he has not on the stat sheet, but he has so many more points than he's being credited for.
Yeah, and you talk about puck possession with Kings Park, especially. That's how they, quite honestly, beat up on Middle Country last night. I think Middle Country touched the puck for a total of maybe 4 minutes throughout the whole game, and I really wish I was exaggerating on that, but it's just that's their style, and it's not just one person that's holding on to the puck. There's one or two plays in it that really stood out to me as far as Brazil's got the puck in the low slot, feeds it up to the high slot, going back across the ice. Like you lose track of who's where and wherever everybody else is on the ice, and that's the kind of game. And even their game against Smithtown, that's a really tough turnaround because that's a stretch within 48 hours of those two games. Those are two other teams, St. Anthony and Smithtown, who thrive on puck possession as well. You don't really see a lot of this run and gun style from these top teams this season. And that's going to be a test to me as far as, okay, if you have the puck for more than 50% of the game, there's a very strong chance you win that game. With the exception of last night's Connetquot Smithtown game, where, you had a hot goal. Smithtown ran into a hot goaltender. He made the saves when he had to, and Connetquot was able to squeak one out. But look at all the other games that we've seen this season. The team that's had the puck for at least 60% of the game, they're coming out on top by not just one goal, it's 3 or 4 goals most of the time.
Yeah.
So, and again, these are the games that you want to build that separation on and everything like that. So puck possession is key, and that's a turnaround where, like you said, neither of those teams are ones you take lightly either. The St. Anthony's going to have that in the back of their mind. The Kings Park Smithtown game, you can argue the winner of that game is going to take first place for the time being, at least. We'll see how Sachem comes out and their next stretch, and East Islip if they can respond going forward as well. But it's a very important stretch, and puck possession here. There's a lot of keys as far as keeping that puck in Kings Park Commack's hands, and what other teams have to do to take it out of their hands.
Yeah, no, definitely. You touched on the run and gun style. The one team that really significantly plays that is East Islip. The way that they try to take a handle on games and win games, and we saw how that played out against Kings Park Commack. Kings Park handled them 6-1.
Yeah.
So it definitely is a puck possession first game, and then you have enough guys to score the puck.
Sure.
It's going to be interesting to see what East Islip turns to if they try to just keep rolling with a strategy and want to just outspeed, out physical teams,
Right.
or if they try to start developing a stronger 5-on-5 offensive strategy because a lot of their goals come on odd man rushes
Yeah.
and just people being out of position.
Hmm.
Like the one goal they scored against Smithtown even was little bit, confusion coming back across
Yep.
neutral and over the blue line and left to right. There's movement. A shot goes and it happens to find the net where
Yeah.
it beats Jake Citron. After people are in front and there's a lot
Hmm.
of movement going on, a lot of people to keep track of, and Smithtown really couldn't get set.
Right. Exactly. They have a lot of pieces. Like we said, East Islip's got a lot of pieces on that club. Obviously, and Antra Ivers have been their main two. But Anthony Pepe is really coming about himself. He had a big performance on Sunday against St. Anthony's. Dominic Magro's doing his thing. Jesse Burns, Christian Osher. You go down the list. It's another team like Kings Park. They might not all have goals per se, but they're all playing well and they're all playing that style that they want to play and that they're used to, quite honestly. So they're another team that there's pieces there to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And another team where there's pieces to work with is the second place team, the only other team in varsity with a double-digit points. We're looking at Sachem.
Yeah.
And now, if you look at the upcoming stretch that Sachem has
Hmm.
after they are currently on a 5-game winning streak, they've taken advantage of the games that they should be winning,
Hmm.
and have handled business, taking that care of, especially after they took a very tough loss against Smithtown at
Yeah.
the beginning of the season. They've kind of found their stride a little bit now, but it comes time that here's the test.
Yeah.
Did you just win the games you're supposed to win,
Hmm.
or are you this legitimate
Yeah.
team that's going to be contending for the 1 seed
Hmm.
because you're a point out and you can claim first place in a week?
Yeah. It's an important one here on Monday. This not this coming Monday, but the following Monday. They're in a little bit of a break now themselves now after a big win against West Islip. So Northport's going to come out big in that game too. Like we said, they're not used to losing in the regular season. They're going to want to right the ship. Angel Spinelli's back is going to be a net for them. Obviously, they want to get good about feeling themselves, and Sachem's going to want to keep this winning streak going. And it's this is the kind of stretch where like you said, we're gonna see what Sachem is made of in this stretch here. And it, like we said, the road's not gonna get easier for them either because in 48 hours after that, they got to go up against Kings Park. So this isn't no slouch time. They've done their job as these last 4 or 5 games have gone, and they've gotten their wins and big wins too. That was a rough go against Smithtown, and they've really come out with these strong performances. Whether it be against West Islip, they took care of business against Ward Melville. They came back against Middle Country. The way they've come out after the start has really impressed me. And again, they have pieces on that team too. It's a lot of the talk is always Kankowski and Calbert and what they've been able to do coming up from JV. But big games from Richie Bovich on last week against West Islip. Nick Ciani's doing his thing. He's a very interesting player to me as well. He does very well in certain areas of the ice that they might lack in, and he's a player to me that really can propel them to take that next step. You have Dominic Opadasano, who's played a couple games, had some goals against Ward Melville. The list goes on for them. I mentioned it last episode how I love how Coach LaRochester is doing a little bit of things differently with them, spreading out players. We were so used to Greg Monty playing defense for them in the JV finals last year. He's playing a little bit of offense now. It's more so his game. So there are pieces there, and this stretch for them is very important for them as far as what's coming up. And they're playing some really strong teams. And again, even after the Kings Park game, they go up against East Islip, who's another strong team. And then it goes right back full circle after another 2-week break back to Smithtown. So this is the kind of time where like you said, can they become one of those top 2, top 3 teams where they solidify themselves as not only a playoff team, but a state's qualifying team? Or are we going to see them duke it out with 4 or 5 other teams for those slots 4 to 8 or 9, if you will?
Yeah. And it is actually kind of funny with how it shakes out. You're almost playing the standings in order in a
Yeah.
sense. Um, and not to an exact science, but you're right. Like they play Northport, and
Hmm.
Northport's going to be super pissed off.
Oh yeah.
And then they play Kings Park, they play East Islip, they play Smithtown, and then you play Connetquot Sayville and St. Anthony's to
Hmm.
round out your November. And at that point, who knows where we're going to be because that's a
Right.
months down the line.
Yeah.
But those could be very crucial games. They're
Hmm.
going to be. They're going to
Yeah.
be.
Absolutely.
But it's those if those teams get hot, like we've talked about with the stretches coming up that they have, they get
Mhm.
rolling, they get some points, they get wins, feeling good, figure out their identities and their strategies and
Yeah.
who you're running out with. And if Sachem trips a little bit in this stretch, those games become a lot more interesting as far
Absolutely.
as can we start flip flopping position because I guarantee you would you would rather be the 3 seed instead of the 4 seed having to possibly go up against any one of Northport, St. Anthony's, Connetquot Sayville,
Yeah.
Sachem, like that those top 3 seeds are going to be the most valuable.
Yeah. And this kind of all goes full circle back to what we were talking about earlier, as not only which of these players, but can your goalie steal you a game? And we talked about this, just the two of us, earlier in the week, and I said, in my opinion, I think Alessandro Giulietti's playing phenomenal hockey lately. Again, Scott Loeb done his job as well. He had a big win against West Islip for them, but especially after the rough start with their 7-2 loss to Smithtown, he's played some really strong hockey. You look at some of their scores. He's held Board Melville to 2 goals, Middle Country to 3, St. Anthony's to 3. Those are big wins for them. And that we talked about it with St. Anthony's as far as confidence goes. That's a kid who's definitely feeling a little bit of confidence right now for them. And like we said, it's not just a matter of can a certain player steal you a game, but it's can your goal. It goes down the line. Which player on your team can steal you a game? It's not just one. Do you have to count on other players on a nightly basis to contribute in that sense?
Yeah, he definitely did steal them a game. The Ward Melville
Oh
game,
yeah.
that game is tied.
Mhm.
Who knows where that
Yeah.
ends if he doesn't make the save that he
Mhm.
does.
Yeah.
Um, that was one of the more phenomenal saves of the varsity
Of
season so
course.
far, and it came in such a crucial moment that last minute where Jake Mangano, who had already had a goal in that game, to
Mhm.
get Ward Melville back within one, him and James Clifford scoring, um, and then he has a scramble look right at the side of the net,
Yeah.
gaping,
Mhm.
wide open, and Giulietti from out of nowhere
Yeah.
just gets his right leg out and kicks it away, and down the other way goes a Pedisano to put the empty netter home,
Yeah.
and that's the game.
Yeah, I had to watch that replay about 3 times to realize how many saves he made in that sequence. And again, like we've said, even in the first episode, Warren Melville's no slouch either. They were in that game for the longest time. You were there. You were calling that game. I filmed that game. We both looked at each other. We said this isn't gonna be no walk in the park for Sachem by any means necessary. And Warren Melville shown it again. Chris Hintz had a very strong game for them in that matchup, and they're another team too where Hintz could have easily stolen them a point and gotten them into overtime. And quite honestly, if Mangano does score there, you look at Hintz and you say, yeah, if you stole us a point, thank you.
Yeah,
But
it could easily have gone the other way.
absolutely.
Chris Hintz is like he's the draft pick of the year
Yeah.
if you're any of the varsity teams.
Mhm.
But Ward Melville absolutely needed him, and that was a big pickup for them in the draft.
Mhm.
But you talk about Sachem and their role players and people emerging. Colin Calbert has really during this stretch to
Yeah.
his own,
Mhm.
um, as far as asserting himself as a varsity player.
Oh yeah.
You knew that him. It's nice to see a lot of the JV kids that we saw last year be so dominant on that level,
Sure.
acclimate and translate into the varsity level just as well as they did down there. It's a whole different
Mhm.
type of game. It's faster, it's stronger, it's more physical. It's you have to be cleaner. You can't be making mistakes. You
Mhm.
have to be crisp with your play.
Yeah.
Otherwise, teams are going to make you pay. But he has really scored some big goals in some
Mhm.
big moments. It just hasn't seemed to be too big for him.
No.
And especially with this upcoming stretch, he's going to have to be a guy that has to keep his play up. And
Mhm.
if he does, then they're going to be just fine.
Yeah. Top 5 point scorers for them, 1 through 4, all played JV last year.
Mhm.
Fifth was Siani, and you could see that these JV kids from last year played so well down there, and they know what it takes to play smart, conservative hockey for a full game. We talked about East Islip, Smithtown. Yeah, they understand it's a full 45-minute game. Game's not over after the first period, and we starting to see that in these first couple wins for them, and they're all really clicking. Like we said, most of the headlines are going to be Konkowski, and rightfully so. He's one of the more phenomenal players in this varsity division. But you could have a night like they had on Monday against West Islip, where you have Bovic who scores two, Siani scores two. It's not just it's not a one man wrecking crew, if you will. There are many players on that team who understand where to be, kind of where to be on the ice offensively. They hold their own defensively, and you got a goaltender who's playing well right now.
It is interesting you bring up the defense. I think that's the one thing actually that could trip them up in this stretch because they're gonna score. They have the second most goals scored,
Sure.
32 in the varsity division.
Yeah.
But they're like the outlier of good teams.
Yeah.
Like they shouldn't be where they are if based on how many goals they've given up.
Right, based on the differential.
And it's not going against their goaltending because as you said, their goaltending's been good. Giulietti's been great.
Yeah.
And Scott Loeb has done his job.
Mm-hmm.
But to give up 27 goals and to still be 5-1, they've scored 32, so they're a +5 in the differential department. But that's what it takes. Is it's going to come down to can you outshoot Smithtown, Kings Park, Northport? Because Northport got into a shootout with Kings Park, and that one went to overtime and ended there 6-6. But does the gas run out of the tank?
Yeah.
Because we're not even halfway through the season, and then what's going to happen come playoff time if you don't firm up that defense? Are you going to have enough gas in the tank to outshoot Smithtown in the finals, Kings Park in the finals? If East Islip gets hot, can you run and gun with them down the stretch? And I think Sachem can with, fresh legs and being right. But is that defense going to make a crucial mistake in a crucial moment that costs you one game when it really matters as opposed to right now where you can make it up? Like we've seen St. Anthony's, they're 2-4 right now, but it's not the end of the world.
Right. Yeah.
In the quarterfinals, if you slip, it could be the end of the world.
Yeah, that's the difference between going out in the first round and making a chance in the semifinals to push for that county final spot. And you talk about their defense. Yes, there is a little bit of concern for me there as well. But I think a lot of that too has to stem with the forwards and as far as back checking and hunkering down in their own zone. Like you said, they're gonna score goals. It's inevitable. Whether it be 3 goals every game, or whether it be 6 goals a game, they're gonna score goals. Every other team in this division is gonna have to deal with it. I'm sorry, they're too good offensively to not score goals. They scored a couple against Smithtown too, even though they lost by a decent amount. They had 2 goals against them. They're gonna score goals. That. I can't see a team like Sachem getting shut out at any point this season. But again, I think from a defensive standpoint, it starts with your own zone and it starts with your forwards coming back to help out. Because we know Sachem's guys like Calbert, Konkowski, whoever else it might be, they're going to do their thing in the neutral zone. They're gonna get open. They're going to create space, whether it be a nice move or just smarts on them. They're going to get their opportunities. It's just a matter of can you limit the opposition's opportunities and keep them at bay? Because like you said, a team like Kings Park, they're going to create a lot of chances in the neutral zone too, and they're going to try and start generating from their own end and push out. And it's a matter of can you play with them as well, they're so used to and generating offense from the neutral zone going into the offensive zone. How can you limit these other teams and make your guys stand out from the rest?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to come down to like we've talked about with what differentiates a good team from a bad team, who makes the least amount of mistakes. Can you outscore your mistakes if you're going to make them? I think we're it's just getting started. We're a quarter of the way through the season, but you're really starting to find out who is what and who is going to be where. But there's been shakeups. Like Smithtown was in first place not even a week ago. Now they're in fourth. It could change so drastically. Right. Sachem could be in second right now, and come the next time that we're doing this, they could be in like fifth. If they don't, pick it up during this, not pick it up because they're 5-game win streak. Can't pick it up anymore.
Right.
But if they don't go through that stretch and get clean games out of it, get wins, get points. You just need points. it could change drastically.
Yeah, you know what it is too. It's a little bit of a testament to the competition this year as well. How much better it's gotten. We kind of had a little bit of a, not necessarily a talent drop off this year, but you could tell like which of the 4 or 5 teams were like the crucial five in the top, or which team stood out more. Whereas, quite honestly every team like has pieces, and any team can steal you a game, whatever the case might be. That top four especially, 1 through 4 is separated by 2 points right now, and that to me that's just a testament to how well the competition is. And like you said, by this time next week, Sachem could be a 5 seed for all we know, or Connetquot could be second. Like it's a real possibility. Like none of these teams are slouches, and there's no weak links on any of these teams, quite honestly. And it's really cool to see from a hockey fan perspective, just to see at any given night, any of these teams can come out and say, surprise, we're gonna win this game, or we're gonna do this to you instead.
Yeah, and I want it to be done justice, the right way, because it does kind of, it's upsetting to see that, and not in a bad way. I want everyone to be able to go play their travel hockey and their PAL and their
Sure.
Junior Islanders and all that stuff, but we're so committed to this varsity Suffolk League.
Hmm.
Um, but it is a shame to see that some kids get so frustrated over not having enough kids, and taking a tough loss, and there's nothing you can do in that moment. It's kind of a lost game before it even starts.
Yeah.
But just down the stretch, you just hope that there's not too much interference when we really get to see a true shakeout of where everybody should be,
Hmm.
where everyone's supposed to be, and where's who's gonna be that best team? Is the best
Hmm.
team really gonna be the best team?
Right. Hmm.
Or did they just get, and I'm sure it's going to be, I'm sure we're going to find out who the best team is, but
Hmm.
I don't want it to be because St. Anthony's had 10 kids there,
Sure. Yeah.
and East Islip had a full roster, and they
Hmm.
just out not out hustled, but they just were more rested.
Right. Yeah, and it's like you said in the first episode too. There are certain things that happen over the course of a season, whether it be teams that are missing players because of travel, or there's an unfortunate injury, or whatever other commitments that come up. That's inevitable in any season. And like we said earlier, you want every team to have their full roster of players who made the team respectively and want to be there, because that's when the competition's at its best. And as the season goes along, there's no doubt in my mind that you'll see that. And quite honestly, some of the games you'll see it now. Even last night's game, Smithtown Connecticut. Smithtown's missing players. Connecticut's, as we said earlier, Connecticut's missing some of their better, more skilled players. Smithtown was missing pieces too. Fezzo was not there for them. They had a couple other players. Colin McMillan wasn't there. So every team's going through their own sort of, I guess, not necessarily rough stretch, but there's instances where you're gonna say, if only we had so and so here, or if so and so wasn't hurt. There's gonna be times where there's unfortunate things happen, or other commitments come about. And I think once the stakes become a little more higher, once playoffs come around, obviously you'll see there'll be more teams at their full strength, and what all these teams are truly made out of.
Yeah, I definitely think it evens out. I don't think there's too much to worry about. You're right. Where everyone is going to miss kids in certain games. Bobby Trice hasn't been there for every game for Smithtown, so
Yeah.
that they've missed out on their top scorer.
Hmm.
St. Anthony's was short-staffed. Ward Melville was short-staffed, but then
Hmm.
they come back with these full rosters, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It was like deja vu all over again, where
Mm.
Ward Melville was short-staffed. They got beat down real bad by St. Anthony's. They come back the next night against Sachem, and they play super competitively.
Sure.
St. Anthony's was short-staffed. They get beat down by East Islip. They come out the next night, and they beat the brakes off of Northport.
Right.
So it's really funny to see that happens twice in a row.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have to see it again, but it is just funny to realize
Mhm.
that teams can get up and these kids can get motivated for games like this. So it'll be interesting. Like in a couple Sundays from now, St. Anthony's plays Middle Country.
Yeah.
Are they going to be short-staffed for that game?
Right.
Is that the game that Middle Country is going to steal because they'll have all their kids there? St. Anthony's might have to run back with their 10 kids, but then the next night St. Anthony's plays Connetquot Sayville,
Yeah.
and they're going to have their full roster there.
Hmm.
So what's going to happen in that game? Are they going to have a repeat of the Northport game where they're going to
Mhm.
come out after maybe playing a tough game against Middle Country with a few kids, and then you have your full team against a Connetquot Sayville team that's on the rise, and you're going to play really well? What's going to happen? So these Sunday games are always interesting because it's just such a wild card of who's going to be
Yeah.
there and who's not.
Yeah. And you know what it is too is with these games the following day, it's a good understanding with these kids to have a short memory in this league. You know, you don't want to dwell on the past. Like what St. Anthony's did against East Islip or the other team you mentioned. It's a matter of how short memory you can have and how important that following game is because you don't want to carry that bad momentum into the next game like St. Anthony's could have done with the East Islip game. They come out, they do a complete 180 essentially, beat the doors off of Northport, and here they are sitting at 2-4, and that looks a lot more respectable than 1-5, and it puts them in that playoff conversation. So it's a real true testament for these kids to say, hey, forget about last night, forget about the game prior. Today's a new day. Let's go out and really set the tone and say, okay, yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery.
Oh, the cliches.
Yes.
Yeah, no, but it is nice to see that there's always things to play for, like, the Suffolk Championship matters.
Yeah.
States matter.
Mm-hmm.
Going to nationals matters.
Yeah.
So they have things to play for, and they want to be there. They do, and it's never going to be that they don't want to be there because it just shows how committed these kids are to the league and how much they care
Of
with
course.
them wanting to perform well and really getting to know us, talking to a lot of them, and just becoming friendly, learning about them and their lives on and off the ice. So the commitment to the league is absolutely unrivaled. I know we love it like no other.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always going to be interesting to see if any given night, you're missing one or two kids. They love this league, and we know that during playoffs and during the crucial stretches, they're going to be there. They're going to make the decision to be committed to their team and want to come out and actually have something to play for, because there's a lot at stake with every game.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every game matters in some way, shape, or form. And, some of these kids have big travel commitments, whether it be for this organization or that organization. And, some of these kids view this high school league as more than anything. There was a story that I told you. I'm not sure if you remember this or not, but I'll say it again. There was a weekend that Sachem played Middle Country that Friday. And that Saturday, a lot of those kids on Sachem, for context, play on 16U AA PAL, the Junior Islanders American team. So they have a game that Saturday at 7 a.m. up in, I believe it was Massachusetts, somewhere in Boston. So the next night, we're going to cover Farmingdale in Northwell. Coach Rochester is general manager of Farmingdale State Ice Hockey. He's telling me a story about how, obviously they have a light bench as is. You got some of the kids that are leaving after the second period and what have you. Thomas Konkowski is one of those players who plays on 16U AA PAL. And he tells Coach Rochester before the game, Coach, I'm not missing the Sachem game. That game is at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday. So by the time that game ends and they have to come back and it's no short game, no walk in the park, they win that game 5-3 and that game ends at 11:40. That game the next morning for him, for his travel team, is at 7:30, I believe. So it just shows the dedication some of these kids have to not only their travel team, but it starts here in Suffolk with their club team. And again, he's one of the leaders of that station team, being the captain and everything. So, he takes a great pride in being there for sure.
Absolutely. And there's none more dedicated than Thomas Konkowski. And it shows with his performance on the ice. The league's leading scorer. He just does things that are so impressive, and so many of these kids are so capable of doing such impressive things. Kieran Pollard the other night scoring one of the more ridiculous goals that we've seen so far from basically the goal line, putting it right past the ear of Scott Loeb, hitting the back corner of the net. Just unbelievable. The skill is just so unmatched by so many of these kids. The things they're able to do on skates. They have more talent in their pinky than I could ever hope to wish for on an ice surface.
That makes two of us.
So I'll always forever be in shock and awe of what they can do and the way they can do it.
Of course.
And the ease at which they make it seem.
Absolutely.
It's truly unbelievable.
Of course. Never failed to impress us every night, that's for sure.
No, and it makes our jobs hard, but it makes our jobs fun.
Yeah.
To have to make those decisions as to who gets what and who goes where. It's a privilege to be able to make those decisions, um, and to be able to have to say this guy scored a phenomenal goal, but this other guy, hey, he's doing a lot
Yeah.
of good things, and he really put up a great performance tonight. And he had this one play that was really great, so
Mhm.
we need to be highlighting this a little more. So
Yeah.
there's always stuff to talk about and always stuff to think about and look at, and we see it all. So
Mhm. Yeah. Nothing gets past us. That's for sure.
no, no. But do you have anything else?
I think we're good. I think we touched on a lot here. This has been a real fun second episode. We gave credit to most of these teams where credit was due. Very exciting the quarter standings being out and everything. So I think now we start to get a little bit more into crunch time with all these teams as far as those bottom couple where it's like, can you really start making that playoff push and seeing what you're made of? And I think those teams in particular, but also that top three and top four will hopefully see a little more of separation. And if not, then no one complains about competition amongst the two of us. That's for sure.
No, nope. Competition breeds great games
Hell
and
yeah.
great performances. So, very excited moving forward. We're gonna have a great couple weeks of action. It's all gonna be on the YouTube at LI Sports Network. If you're not following us on our social medias, please go do so.
Hmm.
Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook
Yeah.
at LI Sports Network. All exclusive social media content there. But we have an exciting week of games coming up. Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, for the next 2 weeks. And I'm thinking what we're going to be doing is every other week is when we're going to be recording and
Okay.
releasing these episodes. Typically around Friday or Saturday is when they will come out. So you guys can have the pleasure of watching these right before we get started with our next 2 weeks of action. We'll kind of break down and look forward to what's to
Hmm.
come. But I think we're just about done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any last words to the people?
Again, apologies to the Connetquot fans from last week. All these teams really have caught our attention in some way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? As much as we didn't give Connetquot enough credit, or whoever the case might be, I think each of these teams, in their own respective ways and right minds, have our attention, and we'll be looking closely. And there's no clear cut favorite. Although Kings Park remains undefeated, I think any of these teams can come out and show to us that you know it's not just a one team show out there in the varsity division. All 10 of these teams are dangerous in their own way.
Absolutely. And with that, roll birds. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you everybody for watching. We hope you have enjoyed. For Vinnie Matula, I'm Dylan Flynn. We'll catch you in the next episode, and we hope to see you on the LI Sports Network this coming week.
Take care.